What's up, everybody? Rick Phan here. Welcome to the Phan of Life channel, Phan of Life show. Today, I have a special treat. I think I'm really excited about this person because this is the first time I'm actually introducing somebody that's part of my team in my efforts of trying to grow an enterprise and being an entrepreneur. And he is a key component in my success. And I learn something new every day from this guy. And the fact that he's still super young amazes me. But today I'm going to introduce you to my company and personal CPA, Matt Bontrager, who is going to discuss a little bit about taxes and the misconceptions and misunderstanding of tax. Because their goal is not to avoid tax, everybody. The goal is to understand the rules of the tax game because it is a game. And within those rules, play to win. And at the end of the day, how you score, whether you win or lose in the game of taxes, how much money you legally can keep, because we all work hard for our money. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Matt Bontrager.
Cool,
Matt,
man.
what's up, buddy? Welcome.
How's it going, man? I'm pumped to be here.
Well, thank you very much, dude, because I know your life is chaotic right now in all aspects. That is good. Got brand new twins, got a thriving, growing business, renovating a house because you need a bigger space. And on top of that, you're making time for yours truly. So I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Of course, man. No, I'm pumped. That's what's nice is like being thrown into the fire. You're kind of forced to learn this like thought of time management, but now trying to put it to practice is like, okay, you really got to start to pay attention to it.
Well, we're going to dive into your world of expertise, numbers and the world of taxes in a little bit. But, just so we can get this out of the way, because I think it's going to be elephant in the room, is how the heck is it that an Asian guy is coming to a white guy for numbers advice? How'd that happen?
True, man. I mean, my thought is everybody should focus on what they're good at. And my thought is now that like I'm a CPA and I work in tax and I work with investors like yourself who are flipping homes and dealing in the industry, is you can't do it all. And that's honestly, which we'll probably touch on later, is what I've learned the hard way starting the firm. Like everybody should focus on what they're good at. I know everybody preaches that, but I feel like that's why you're doing it, right? You know that it's better suited for you and it's going to be a better benefit to you to outsource the numbers and the tax work so that you could focus on what you're doing well, which is buying deals, renovating the deals, doing your day-to-day operations.
Well, you're a key component, man, because your job and to work with me is to help me keep the money that I try to make, right? So,
exactly.
Well, along that vein, talk to me about, you a little bit, because I do think it takes a certain brain, a certain personality to really dive into the world of tax and numbers and really enjoy it and have a passion for it. And it's crazy for the general public to understand, to see, but dealing with you, I do believe you have a passion for it, man. You're always on the cutting edge. You're always sending me tidbits. You're on the game. So talk to me about, you a little bit and how you got into this.
Yeah. So flashback, I was born and raised in Vegas. I was going to school. I played baseball, wanted to go the pro baseball route, and then snapped my clavicle playing flag football. And was like, all right, this is not going to work. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have made it pro in baseball. I was good, but I just wasn't that good to get to that level. So when I hit school, I got a job at Wells Fargo, and I loved working with money. And at that point, right, you're not even doing taxes working at Wells Fargo. I started out as a teller and then went to a banker, but I was seeing, how people acted when they had a lot of money. I saw how people acted when they didn't have a lot of money. So just being around money like that, I found very interesting. Then when I'm in school, I was like, okay, right, I like money. And then as they start to like tell you about like the different majors and I look at accounting, I'm like, all right, man, this is the language of business. I don't care who I talk to or what business I go in, accounting is applicable. It's numbers, it's finance. Again, it's the language of business. So I chose accounting as I was in school. And when you're in school, they preach to you the big four. And what that is, right, it's the big four firms. So it's like Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, and EY. So I worked hard, but I was not an A student. And usually it's the people who are A students, 4.0 GPAs, who are making it to the big four. My route was definitely different. I was the schmoozer, had to put on a suit, go to every different event that they had, and really just network to get in. But I got in. I went to, I think at the time was probably the biggest of the big four, right? The number one of the big four. And they were out here in Vegas. So I went to Deloitte out of school. And I did audit. And so usually when you're an accountant and you go to a firm after school, you pick audit or tax. And I'll be honest, for me to graduate college with my bachelor's in accounting, I took one tax class. So I wasn't even versed in tax leaving school. And that tax class I thought was very hard. Going back now, I probably think it's so rudimentary and very easy. But at the time, it was like everybody went to audit. The relationship of being an auditor, the term auditor is never good. When you walked into a room for a meeting, everybody was like, oh man, the auditor, right? Like it's just like an adversarial relationship. You're never there as like a value add. And then I realized, I was like, man, this audit stuff just is not fun. So I realized tax, the relationship of someone's tax strategist or tax preparer was way different. When they sat down for a meeting, they were excited. They were like, hey, I'm going to save some money here. I'm going to get closer to my goal of saving, or whatever the goal is. Because
interesting,
right, we can touch on later. Sometimes the goal is not always to save, get your taxes down to zero. Because what if you need you want to come up for a loan soon or something like that. So, but I saw the relationship was different. And as a guy who I'm pretty personable, I like to sell things. Tax is way easier to sell. Audit is, hey, you need this, so hire me.
Right.
Tax is, watch how good I am, hire me. Started learning more about tax all that I could. And then boom, that kind of got us to where we are now. We started this firm in January 2020 with Ryan, which we can touch on that later if we want to kind of get into the inception of the firm. But yeah, man. So big background in accounting. I love it because it's the language of business. And I think honestly, coming from an audit background and now doing tax gives me a little bit of a competitive advantage, because now some tax preparers, when you send them your financials, like a profit and loss or a balance sheet, they don't really know how to interpret that. A profit and loss, yes, but a balance sheet, Coming from an audit background, I'm very strong in looking at numbers and seeing like sort of the analysis behind like, hey, the real health of your business when you show me these financials. And that's what audit did for me. So, but man, I love it. It's the language of business. I just did something the other day with someone at UNLV. They were asking me, do you think the accounting profession is going away? And I'm like, no. Do I agree that you shouldn't go to college if you don't want to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, stuff like that? No, because you're right. There's so much education for free online. Right. And I think I'm all about taking action, which is something I think that you're the best at. One of the best at is just not hesitating and just doing it, right? Even if it's a baby step. And I think, yeah, so I would still say accounting is very strong. That's why I'm in it. I love it. It's the language of business. It's got me to where I am now. And so, boom, that's kind of like a whole background of
no, that's great, man. That's great. I love listening to the way people talk, because what type of language and words they use says a lot about how they feel about the topic, right? I love when you said accounting, numbers, money is the language of business. So let me ask you this. What is it about the general public that they don't understand about tax, or is it, or their misconceptions about tax that A, they don't pay attention to, or B, they just think it's way too out of the realm, or I'm just Joe Schmo guy that works 9 to 5. I don't need to understand these things. Are there misconceptions that the general public is having that you can enlighten us on?
Dude, for sure. It's fine. I just got like goosebumps because like, this is, I think, the biggest one. And it's, well, one, like we'll back up. I find it crazy that, right? So I went through the school system here. You're not given like financial literacy courses, which I think is insane. Like how to reconcile a checkbook, how to write a check, things like that. But one thing is like in regards to tax, the US tax system, you are on an honor system. Mm-hmm. When you file a tax return, you are telling the IRS, this is what happened. Most people think that the IRS, which you'll see the memes going around online all the time. IRS, I'm not going to tell you what you owe us, but if you're wrong, you go to jail.
Right.
There's some truth to that, but that's like if you were a W-2 employee and that is it. When you're a W-2 employee, it's very easy. You could almost say, like what I like to say is there's a right answer to your return. There's no flexibility. It is, I work at ABC company. I made $50,000. I'm single. I have no dependents. This is how much tax I owe, and that is it. My employer withheld some of that. I'm going to do my return. Did I withhold enough? Did I not withhold enough? I'm going to get a small refund, or I'm going to owe a little bit. That's it. So you could say there's the right answer there. But again, I'm still telling the IRS what happened based on my tax return. I'm telling them what happened for the year. I determine whether I get a refund or not. But obviously the information has to be accurate. But the second you're self-employed, there's no right answer to a tax return. Again, it's what you tell the IRS. Did you put away money in a 401k or a retirement account? So there's just, there's so much flexibility when it comes to like your options and when it comes to tax, and especially when you're self-employed, because then you're dealing with write-offs and expenses and stuff. But I think the biggest misconception is that when you file a tax return, you are telling the IRS what happened, and then that determines, again, your refund or tax owed. But again, it's the honor system. The US tax system is the honor system. There's no right answer. And I think a lot of people think, oh man, but no, there's no right answer.
So basically it's almost like taking a quiz that it's not a black and white answer. It's an answer that if you can justify legitimately, then that answer can be the correct answer for your benefit.
Because think about this. Yeah, exactly. That same person that works at XYZ company, they make 50,000, right? Think about the entities involved. We have the government who wants their money, the IRS, and then we have my employer who paid me 50,000. If my relationship was just between me and the employer and I had to tell the IRS, hey, I made 50,000, I'm single, no dependents, they're going to tell me, okay, like essentially based on those numbers, here's what you owe.
Right.
But what if I walked over to TD Ameritrade and put $5,000 in a 401k, or I'm sorry, right, like an IRA account? That now adjusts what I owe.
Right.
Because now I have to tell the IRS on my tax return, wait, I made 50,000, but I went and put $5,000 away in a retirement account, so I need a credit for that. So do you see how, unless you're collecting all the information and reporting it accurate enough, then that answer will be wrong. But notice how there's no right answer. It's you have to collect the information and then report it to the IRS, and that will determine your refund. But again, you're still telling the IRS. But then again, if you have your information by October, November, and the year's not over, that's when you really start to make moves. And that's when this becomes a game. And you're like, oh man, in November, I can tell you what your tax bill is going to be by April, assuming nothing changes.
Right.
But you're like, man, I don't like that. I don't like that I'm going to owe 80,000 in tax. Okay, well, let's sit down and see how we can bring it down, because we still have time to make moves. So that's where I'm like, when I say that there's no right answer, is it's so flexible. You could say there's a right answer because at the end of the year, when the year is closed, we have to gather your information. We have to put it together, see what happened. But if you're proactive and you're planning, man, like you could pay no tax, you could pay a ton of tax. Like it's so flexible. And I guess that's just the biggest misconception, is that the IRS doesn't know. They're waiting for you to tell them, And so that's why you just want to be on your toes and have somebody that knows what they're doing. Because I will say, I'm a fan of TurboTax.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to us and says, hey, all I have is a W-2, TurboTax is a great product.
Yep.
Because there's almost a right answer. That's all you did. But if you're self-employed and you have some retirement accounts, probably best to use somebody that knows what they're doing.
And tell me if this statement is true. Politics aside, regardless of who's in office, who's in the White House, what have you, at the end of the day, the U.S. economy needs to revolve. It needs to move. It needs to function. It needs to have trades and goods, services. It has to grow and it has to continue to flourish, right? So there are incentives there for you as an individual to be, lack of a better description, you Inc. You want to be a productive part of that ecosystem, which is either standard consumer or someone that is a producer. And the producers will always get more benefits because the government, with all its flaws, still want to encourage you to be on that side of the game. Am I close to being accurate on that?
You're very accurate. The tax code is written because the government incentivizes people to move a certain way. Think about if government wants to help low-income households with housing, why are they giving people and real estate investors low-income housing credits?
Correct.
Because they would want to provide low-income housing. So I would say yes, that is their way of sort of pushing people in a direction and making things happen, is through tax code. If they want to boost productivity, which I would say is always every economy wants to boost productivity, right? If we go back to like Ray Dalio and the talks there, that is how the economy grows, is right. Productivity has to increase. Look at the guy who works for XYZ company as a W-2 employee. He is entitled to no deductions.
Right.
He makes his 50,000, that's it. If he goes out to dinner that night and talks business, it's not a deduction.
Right.
But if you have self-employed John Smith over here, Sally, whoever that goes and they get a 1099 and they're self-employed and they go have dinner and have a business conversation, they get to write it off. And that's because who has more productivity to the economy?
Right.
Self-employed person. You could argue that the W-2 person does too, but think about it. They're only servicing one client. It's their employer. You know who gets to write off a business meal? Their employer,
Right. Right.
not the employee. So
And to your
you are
point,
for sure 100% right, though, that yes, that is how the tax code is drafted.
well, see, I'm learning from you, my friend.
Mhm.
To your point, let's emphasize on that because that's a tangible example. Going out to dinner, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that 2021, 2022 dinner incentives because they want to make sure that post-COVID, we're driving business to restaurant industries that has suffered greatly during the shutdowns, right? So for example, now instead of doing, I think it was a 50% write-off, now it's 100% write-off on all your dinners going out, so long as you are productively talking about business and have full intent to do business and make a profit. Am I correct?
Yep. And that's probably one of the best examples you could say. Who got hit the hardest in COVID? The restaurant industry,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would just say entertainment at all.
Sure.
Entertainment is still no longer deductible, but meals. Before, if you went on a $100 meal, I've seen people on tax returns say that they have, let's say, 15,000 in meals throughout the year. That was only a $7,500 deduction because you had to cut it in half. You were only entitled to half. Now you get the full deduction. So yes, that is huge. And as you can see, that right there is a direct correlation of what did they want to do? They wanted to spark and give a big increase to the restaurant industry. So what did they do? They did it through a tax incentive
For business
for
owners.
business owners.
Right. So let's roll into that then. In this day and age, you have literally everything you need on this thing.
Mhm.
Everyone has hobbies. Everyone has interests. You did a great video on side hustles, which, as part of this, I'll link all of your social media in the description. But talk to me about people that basically are doing their hobbies and not thinking bigger picture in terms of trying to turn into a side hustle, side business, and how much they're missing out and how easy it actually could be to turn it into a business. And like I said, turn you into a you Inc. Talk to me about that.
Well, first, let me say it is legit, and this is going to sound crazy, but it is legit a mental mind shift of just saying, oh, I'm not going to call it a hobby. I'm going to call it a business.
Mm.
You could be able to do this. Like, that's it. Like, people don't overcomplicate that, people, right? If you're doing a hobby and you're watching this,
Beautiful.
call it a business. But I will say to now take that, next step, get a business bank account. Or if it's not a business bank account, go get like a separate checking account. And if you're collecting money for these, like let's say you're making bracelets and you're selling them to friends, start to collect the money and the revenue into that account, But I will say, I think there's too many people, like you said, that are doing hobbies that aren't taking it serious enough to now classify it as a business and seeing how it could help them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For
So
sure.
so I want to reiterate that when we're talking about you Inc., you legitimately have to be doing a business. But a lot of times you guys, people in the general public are doing things that they are so interested in and they're good at and they're great at. They're just not converting that into a professional service and they're missing out. So I'm glad we touched on that. So
Sure.
talk to me a little bit about your evolution. So now you and Ryan Pineda open TrueBooks. And that has evolved. You guys are hiring like crazy because the influx of business. And I think the next thing that you guys are evolving into is you're going to be the numbers guy, bookkeeper, and CPA, obviously, for the syndicate investment firm, right? As well too.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in that prior ramble that I did, right, we got up to the point where I was able to leave the firm that I was at, and because that was always the goal. The goal was to, again, get away from being an employee and become an employer, or at least a self-employed individual. I wanted my own time. My goal, obviously, is to have a successful business and make a ton of money, like I think everybody else's is.
Sure.
But even if I were to just make, whatever amount, 80,000 a year, 60,000, whatever, and I got my own schedule, I'll take it. My own schedule is worth a ton,
Absolutely.
So I was able to do that and leave. And the way that it happened is that shift, I was building up clients on the side and just didn't quite have enough yet to make it justify my W-2 salary that I was making. I was on a good path to become I had just become a manager. Again, I had my college degree. I'm licensed as a CPA. I have really good experience. So I was on a good path there. But what was it not going to get me? My own schedule. It's grueling hours to stick it out. One of my side clients was Ryan Pineda. He was posting online. If you guys follow him, back at his Flamingo office where kind of things conspired for him. But I ended up getting his bookkeeping on the side, and then that became his tax work. And we met one time, I forget where, I think I went to like one of Forever Home's like meetings or something, quarterly meetings. And I made a joke to him saying, dude, we should like start a firm. And he was, you know, Ryan, if you don't know
Yeah,
Ryan, he's like,
you
oh,
put
dude,
them in
let's
his
do
brain.
it.
He's going. Yeah, he's going 100 miles an hour.
He's
Yeah.
like, let's do it. And I was like, all right, let's talk about what that looks like. So I think within a couple of weeks, we had a plan. We had the name picked out. We started to roll with the idea. And I quit my job, I think like December 15th, had like 2 weeks off to kind of really ramp things up and get ready. And January 1 is when we kicked off TrueBooks. So yes, and so that's been a wild ride. And if you think about it, right? So Ryan, the master marketer and the big brand, wasn't near as big as what it was now, but it was still pretty big at that time. And I was the operator. So what do you find in most businesses? You need somebody who can, what does Ryan always say, right? Which I really love when you break down any business.
Yep.
You need sales, marketing, operations. That's it.
Yep.
So he had the sales and the marketing. I had the operations as the licensed CPA. I would manage it. And for that first year, man, I basically did all of the work myself. I had a couple friends help here and there who are now full time with us, but man, that was tough. But like, yeah, we've grown pretty big now. I think we're at 6 or 7 people, just hired another staff the other, like I think 2-3 weeks ago. So it's grown like wildfire. And that's what I like about this business is it's recession proof, and it's like, it was COVID proof. We were one of the essential businesses that had to technically still meet in public because we're certified public accountants. And so, but it's been awesome, man. And like I said, but now even Ryan, he's yelling at me left and right because I have to get myself out of the employee seat. I've always been an employee. I've never been necessarily a manager or right, like the owner of a business. So now having to deal with every facet of it gets pretty challenging. But it's been a fun ride, man. I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know. And like I saw somebody the other day. We actually had a client of ours who posted this really nice, just like really transparent post online, and he was in the insurance business. And one of his branches failed. And he was like, man, it was a lack of leadership on my part. I take full, like, and it was just interesting to see somebody talk about that. And I mean, right, you probably you read the books and you hear people online where they're like, you know, I've had failed businesses, you know, stuff like that. And to think that TrueBooks could fail is like gut wrenching.
Sure.
It's like, man, what would I do? I would have to go back to being an employee somewhere. Like I said, I have good experience. I'm licensed. I could probably always go somewhere and let's say make like 100,000, 120,000 at a company. But what is that? I'm working 40 to 80 hours a week on their time. I have no schedule. So, so it's kind of comforting to know that I could fall back on that, but it's like really scary now that I like have a business to think, man, like people, like businesses fail, you know? And so I just find that interesting now. I never really thought about that as an employee. So,
well, I think it's a great transition to my next question for you is you and I are kind of in similar boats because myself, I'm still an employee, you know, while my wife and I are building our enterprise. And because I have such a great relationship with my employer, I was employee, you know, 8 months after the inception of the business. You know, I was employee number 2 here in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of relationship that goes deep rooted and you know, I'll be with the company forever until I no longer have the heart for it, you know, so it's not even a monetary thing at this point. So I'm very blessed in that aspect, but you are right. There is a transition from being an employee and being not even self-employed, but an actual business owner, you know, because there are a lot of people out there that actually have their business own them. Right.
Good point. Yes. Very good point.
And to bring it full circle, in order for you to delegate and have your freedom and your time, because ultimately that's the goal, you need to put good team members in place. And a CPA firm and a partner like you, that's huge. That's huge. So let me take a quick pause on that really quick. Let me ask you, so where are you personally in life? Because I know it's super chaotic in all ways that are good. You are renovating a house, like I said, got brand new twins, got a 2-year-old as well, and running a successful business and everything else. How do you keep sane? How do you keep all the hair on your head, my friend?
Dude, I got a really good spouse. I love my wife. She holds the house down. So I think that, right, like when you're starting to grow a family, that's super important. Which I mean, like kind of weird comment, but like I was like thinking like with my wife the other day that I feel bad for spouses that are in relationships where like, let's say they have kids and they just really aren't happy at their home life with their spouse. So I'd even said to her, I was like, man, like it sounds dumb, but like I'm really happy that like I still have a lot of passion and love for my wife that like, because life is hard when you're having young kids. It's very tough. So I think having someone at the house to really help, like so that I could be here working is huge. But But I will say though, it's pretty chaotic now, and I'm just almost like learning to live with it. And like you said, I'm just like thrown in the fire. Like if I had to picture my life right now, it is literally walking on coals through a fire.
Mhm.
So I do find myself, I'm always on my phone, then I'll drop my phone and go hang out with my son and play for 15 minutes. Then I'll be back on my computer, standing at the dinner table. Then I'll make him dinner and, hang with him for a minute, feed him. So, but that's my day. So it's kind of up and down, but I'm working all day, whether I'm on my
Mhm.
phone or on my computer. But I will say that, like you mentioned, there is a big difference between being a business owner and being like, so we'll call it self-employed. For that first year, I was essentially self-employed doing all of
Sure.
these tasks myself. And now I forget who said it best though, but where it's like, think about hiring, right? So uh, we have an office manager. And when most people think about hiring somebody, they think, oh man, that's going to be like, let's say 50,000, but it's not.
Right.
It's,
Right.
it's whatever, 4 or 5,000 a month. It's not necessarily a big expense up front. And to think about how much time you can relieve with now them on your side. So I will say now going into year two and being in year two, having people on the team and being able to relieve some of the duties that I've been doing and now hold other people accountable for these tasks. Because again,
Mhm.
we're all on the same train here. We're all on the same goal of having a successful firm, good client service. Everybody wants to make money. Like that's the goal here. So I will say right now I'm learning to delegate. I will admit I'm not good at it at all.
Right.
I'm pretty
Right.
bad at it. But I feel like I have a good management style, and I believe that because I ask, right, like my team members, like, hey, does this work for you? And they agree. So I would say right now it's chaotic, but I'm learning to delegate and I'm learning to build out systems now so that people can handle things on their own instead of
That's beautiful.
always here as a guide. Because this is what I tell every one of the people on my team. I say, hey, I'm going to show you how I do it and how I've done it. But if you find a better way, do it. And tell me though, so now I do it that way. Because I'm all about, like, I had a partner at Deloitte we were literally, the process to get a document from an email into our system. He made a comment one night, we were in the office at like midnight. And he was like, guys, this takes too many clicks to get this to there. And I was like, dude,
Mhm.
I agree. He was sitting there like counting the clicks. And I'm like, that's what I think efficiency is all about.
Right.
Everybody should be on the same page to streamline things. So it's like same way with you on finding a deal or managing contractors or managing rehab, whatever it may be in your business. I always tell people, hey, I'm going to show you how I did it, which I think is the best because I strive to do it the quickest and the most efficient. But if you can do it better, let me know. So I would just say, kind of like a convoluted answer though, but it's pretty hectic, but I'm managing. You just got to kind of roll with it. And I think times like this, like really, build character or whatever you want to call
No,
it.
it
But it's
does.
like, yeah, it's like, when you make it through, I'm going to look back and be like, man, year two of growing TrueBooks was a bitch. But
Yeah.
it's like now, all right, like, but we made it through.
Well, I'll take it back to your earlier statement when you were talking about, when you first got the education, you're like, oh my gosh, this seems so difficult. And now you're like also rudimentary because your capacity level, and your callus that you build for life becomes, stronger because you've gone through the fire.
Dude,
So,
how hard was your first flip? Like, think about back to your first flip property, probably
bro,
compared to now.
my first flip, I didn't sleep and I drove by that property 4 times. Like I live, we live in Las Vegas, right? So it's not like we live in Oklahoma or anything like that. Yeah, we get windy, but we don't get like, Wizard of Oz tornado. But I
Yeah.
had every scenario in my brain, like, oh my God, what if a gush of wind comes and knocks my house down, or someone breaks in and starts cooking meth? And it's just crazy. I mean, one of my houses got broken in. I went there and I took my pit bull and slept there with my gun for 2 nights, before the alarm system came in. Now we got 7 projects going. 2 are going great. No, I'm sorry. All of them are going great. 2 has some challenges, and I just sleep it off like nothing because,
Seven's a lot, dude.
yeah, it is. It is. But
Seven's a lot.
but at the end of the day, it's that callus that you build, right? Just like lifting weights, your hands get stronger, and after a while, you go,
And
what can you control? Control what you can control. Everything else, you'll deal with it as it comes. And at the end of the day, man, it's gonna work out regardless. You
and you
know.
got a killer teammate, you got a killer spouse at home. So
Hey,
it's
bro,
all,
you work with her. You work with her more than I work with you because she is my numbers gal, and she holds a standard that I couldn't do without her for sure. So thanks
yeah,
for giving Autumn a shout out.
yeah.
So let me ask you this: as a father, my friend, when you were being brought up in your family, did you guys talk about money a lot, or was it one of those things where, like, the general public, where, hey, it's not appropriate, it's disrespectful to talk about money, people kind of shy away from the conversation? Was it like that, or was it pretty free?
Oh, dude, it was pretty free, but it was definitely like, it was weird. I just had to talk the other day. So single mom, my dad wasn't around, so it was just my
Mhm.
mom. And she's a loudmouth Jewish lady, like she's insane, but she's funny. And it was weird though, because we definitely didn't have a lot of money, but I always had what I needed. And I feel
Mhm.
like my mom, just to be honest, was like a hustler. She used to work in the casinos, was a pit boss here. But so I always had what I needed. Like I played sports, I did a
Yeah.
lot of activities. So I had a new baseball glove, I had a bat, but I wouldn't say we talked about money, but I didn't get any more education on money. I would say even less than what, somebody maybe with like, a two-parent household had or something. I plan to do things a lot different with my kid, so but I think it was definitely school and kind of like my own self-education that got me to where I was educated with money. But no, I wouldn't say it was taboo, but yeah.
And that leads me into my next question. So you already touched on it. How are you going to raise your kids in terms of their understanding of money and how comfortable talking about money and numbers are? They don't have to be CPAs. Not everyone is going to be an accountant, a CPA, bookkeeper, but understanding how money works and not being afraid to talk about it and not having this bad connotation or this taboo topic in the house, I think is valuable. So, I mean,
Mhm.
what's your opinion on that? And then how are you going to raise your kids, you think?
So I'm very open about money, almost too much sometimes, that when somebody, like I was talking to somebody the other day and he was showing me a development for his house, my first question was, what is it going to cost? I
Hmm.
think of everything in money.
Hmm.
I think that's just the accountant in me. And I'm all about the reward system. I get paid if I perform.
Right.
Everybody does. So if I want my kid to perform at a high level, I don't think it's bad to incentivize him with money because I think money is good. Money's good when you're a kid to buy toys. Money's good when you're 16 to go out with your friends. Money's good when you're 30 to go on a really nice dinner date with your wife or girlfriend. Money will satisfy you at every level. And again, like if you can't tell, I'm all about making a lot of money and having choices. I think
Sure.
it brings a lot of choices. So I, I do plan to talk about money a lot, whether it's I've yet to find like I think a good system, but to definitely make it a topic in the house and have them understand how to balance a checkbook and what taxes are and how taxes work in a simple way. Like right now, if I give my son a granola bar, dad tax, I'm taking a huge bite out of that thing. So it's like just like the theory of it, and I think talking about it. So I would say with how comfortable I am with money, and my
Yeah.
wife, she's in finance as well, so she's into money as
Oh,
well.
wow.
It'll be a big topic in our house, but and I definitely think like more people should talk about it.
I
I,
agree.
I always found it like odd when people were pretty reserved about it, but I respect it because
Mhm.
I again, I may not understand why they think it's so odd, but I got to respect their thoughts on it. Maybe it is something from their childhood to where they were taught like, hey, you don't talk about this, but I'm all about it, man. The first thing, like I've met people and right off the bat we start talking salaries about what we make, stuff like
Mhm.
that because it's just so comfortable for me though. But I do plan to talk about money a lot and try to hammer that into my kid's head on small business, lemonade stand, taxes, everything that I can.
And we all know the saying, money doesn't buy happiness. And you're right, because you can be a shithole and you be miserable. I know plenty of people that are miserable that have,
Yes.
a ton of money. So it's at the core, it's who you are and your relationships. But there is no doubt that everything in life is easier with money. And
Mm-hmm.
those that say money is not important has never flown private. I'll
Oh
tell you
yeah.
that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Even now, like in my second year of business, this is my second year. So I'm very new to this. There's guys that have been like way more experienced than I am. I can already see that I may, I've left, so right, I'll be honest. Luckily enough, I've made more money here in
Mhm.
these last 2 years than I have than when I was an employee. So that's been nice. But I can already say the benefit of what I've gotten of having my own schedule is huge.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
And right, so like even that right there, even if I made a little bit less money, the fact that I have my own schedule and I probably work more, to be honest, right? Like I said, when I was an employee, yeah, there was long hours just because that's the nature of being a CPA. But you think I was on my phone at 11 or 1, 2 a.m. if I didn't need to be? No. Now I got my laptop because there's so many duties that I have. But again, so I really do think it comes down to if you are really money motivated, it's obviously a direct byproduct of your right, like your productivity and the value you bring to other clients and whoever your right, like your customer is. But
Sure.
yeah, no, I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of having your own time. Now that I'm in this, building a sustainable business and making a ton of money. Like that's my goal. I'm not shy about it. Like
Beautiful, man. Why,
yeah,
why should you be?
yeah,
So
no,
I
for
won't
sure.
keep you much longer. I'm gonna ask you two things. So number one, people are listening. Let's talk about the tax side one more time. If
Mhm.
there is a general tidbit that you can give to the general public about understanding tax or reshaping the way they see tax, what would it be?
If we're talking a W-2 employee,
Yeah, let's start there.
if you're a W-2 employee, I would Google what a traditional IRA is and a Roth IRA, because those are things that can really pertain to an employee, you know? And what that is, like in a nutshell, is like I said back in that example of, if you're, John Smith working for ABC company and you make 50 grand, you're going to pay tax on 50 grand. But if you want to save some of that money and get a deduction for it, you can, So I would say looking up what IRAs are and 401ks are great topics for people who are employees, and that's really all they do. If you are a business owner, and this, I'll probably try and give 2 tips. So, because if you're a business owner, you're going to fall into 1 of 2 buckets. You're pretty experienced or you're not.
Right.
For the new business owners, and I mean, if you're doing a hobby that now after watching this video, you're like, dude, I'm a small business. Good for you.
Yep.
Because now what you need to focus on is a profit and loss statement. Money in, money out. Getting things organized, because when you come to an accountant, that is the first thing they're going to ask for. Send me your profit and loss statement. That's what we need to do your tax return to get started. If you are more advanced, I guess actually there's really not much. It is focusing on your profit and loss still, but that's really industry specific, right? Like if you're in real estate, start to focus on 1031 exchanges if Biden doesn't get rid of it. If, or what, flipping entails, what capital gains taxes versus business income tax, the way stocks are, right? Like when you sell a stock, that's a capital asset, that's capital gain treatment, but I would just say, if you're a W-2 employee, focus on like your IRAs and your 401ks, read a small article. My favorite website, which, right, like if you find it, maybe just store it in your description, is thebalance.com.
Okay, put that in there.
They just have really good short articles on money. I wish my kid could read, like, at least at that level. They obviously can, he's 2, but I'm like, man, they have great short articles on business, taxes, small business, hobby stuff. Like, it's the best. And it's like, pick up some of those on what 401ks and IRAs are. Learn about how you're incentivized to save money. And then if you're a business owner, start to look at what deductions are, meals and entertainment, profit and loss kind of stuff is what I would focus on.
Beautiful, beautiful. Next question and last question is, what would you advise people that are on the fence, going back to, hey, I'm doing this as a hobby, man, do I really want to turn this into a business? How does someone take action? Because I think what happens is that fear of the unknown, right? And that fear of failure is always looming. How do you overcome that? And how do you give yourself a shot?
I would say if those are the circumstances, that's a bad excuse, because I think if you can't even handle that decision, you're going to have an even near impossible time leaving your job to go full time into your, what was a hobby, now your small business. I would say if you're working a W-2 job and you're doing something on the side that you're selling one off, making sandals, bracelets, doing bookkeeping, which I think is one of the best side hustles, would then sure, just start to do it. You're already doing it. Just take it a little bit more official. Collect your money into a separate account, maybe get a separate credit card for when you start having transactions, like you're buying client gifts, you're taking clients to dinner. That's very easy. The biggest thing is when now you're like, man, I make 50,000 on a W-2 and I make 42,000 at my side job. What does this look like if I were to leave my W-2 and do this full time and get to wake up in my underwear and just say, I don't want to do anything today? That decision is going to be a lot harder. And I can share what it came down to for me was this. I knew that the money was there. I was right at that level at least. So I knew if I didn't make a dime more, I was okay. I was going to cover what my monthly expenses needed to be. That was 1. And 2, if it failed, I knew I could go back and get a job. Because to touch on that, like cliche regret, you don't want to be 65, 70 and be like, man, what if? That would suck.
Yeah.
You take 5 minutes, because I get pretty scatterbrained, and so it's hard for me to like really just focus sometimes. But if you legit take 5 minutes to think about what your life is like at 70 and to have regret at 70, that'd feel pretty bad. So I'm like, so I would just say focus on that. If you're already doing something on the side, just take it a little bit more serious. Get a P&L going, profit and loss statement, track your money. Just start tracking your money. But then if you're already doing your side business and you're waiting and you're like deciding to make the jump, that's what I focused on. I said, hey, I needed to make X dollars per month to keep my family, a roof over my head. Can I do that? If the answer is yes, okay. Can I go back to my job if I fail? If the answer is yes, it likely is. If you get 2 yeses, I think you're good. Jump for it.
That's beautiful. That's a great checklist and template, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And let me leave off with this. So you as a dad, the ultimate success is that your kids grow up, they become, great participants in society, great citizens, great people. Give me, if you had 1 or 2 life lessons that if your kids understand by the time they're adults or teenagers or young adults, you would feel like you have had the biggest success above all the business things. You would feel the most fulfillment. What lessons do you want or wish to embark on your kids?
So I would say being nice and humble to me is one thing. Like, I'm really not a fan of people who like can't laugh at themselves. Like, right, my wife is very personable, like social, like the social butterfly term. If they're nice to people and they can hold a conversation, I think that's huge. Because I think kids nowadays, I heard that I was the last generation. So I was born in 92. They're saying that I'm the last generation where you can really communicate with people online and in person. That
Wow.
after me is really just going to be focused online. I think that's kind of scary. So if my kids can communicate well and feel comfortable with people in person, I would be happy there. And I think another one would be, and this sounds so dumb, but it's like like finding happiness. My happiness is money and success with business and having my own time. I weigh both of those very heavily. But if my kids' happiness is just having their own time and making 30,000 a year, I'd be cool with that because you're happy. At the end of the day, happiness, I think, is the goal. But it's not bad if money makes somebody very happy. I'm very money motivated. So that's just my happiness. But so I would say if they're sociable people and they can communicate well and they're nice, there's one thing. And then if they kind of find what makes them happy, which I think is very hard for people, like I'm still in this and it's stressful at times, but I'm happy. But that would be number 2.
And just, the fact that you told me you were born in the 90s just hurt my feelings, but
hey, my wife, she was born 87, so I got someone in the 80s.
well, if I can just embark any life experience on you, is just know that you're way ahead of the game. So congratulations, and know that what you seek that brings you joy will evolve as you evolve. So
I've noticed that.
There's no right answer, man. But I want to thank you, Matt, dude. Every time I talk to you, I learn something more. And today's video is it's just a quick introduction. And if you guys are listening, you guys are watching, I wasn't kidding when I said this guy gets pumped up and he is passionate about what he does. So when you're trying to find a teammate to fill a need in your business, in your life, you got to find a teammate that knows the position well and knows and has the passion to play the game the way and at the level that Matt plays. So it's my honor, brother. We'll hook up soon. I don't want to prolong your day because I know you got a lot going on. And plus, if people want more details, they need to hit you up. Nothing's for free. Sure. Your time is well worth the investment. So thank you very much, man. We'll catch up soon.
For sure, man. I'll talk to you soon. We'll do another one of these, maybe more detailed.
Oh, dude, for sure. Anytime. We'll do one in person as well, too.
Yeah, we'll say, hey, leave something in the comments of what you'd want to jump into, maybe more detailed, and then we'll have to scan those.
Beautiful. You guys heard the man. Leave comments, get questions. Let's get some interest, and we'll do a part 2 to this. Matt, have yourself a great day, brother. We'll talk soon.
You too, man. Later.